Please tell your master, Sifo Dyas, that his order will be met on time.
What was the real reason that the enigmatic Jedi, Sifo Dyas, was terrified of the Grand Master of the Jedi Order, Master Yoda? What cruel and heartless atrocities were committed by the Jedi Council to make Sifo Dyas so fearful of them, and why did his Jedi Master try to keep Sifo's most unique Force powers hidden from them?
Sifo Dyas understood. He saw the future.
Today we are talking about the hubris and dogma of Master Yoda and the Jedi Council, and the dangers they posed to the gifted Sifo Dyas, one of the only Jedi who had the power to save the Republic and the Jedi Order.
I don't know where you get your delusions, laser brain.
Now we know that the arrogance and hubris of the Jedi is largely to blame for their downfall during the era of the Clone Wars.
The dark side of the Force has clouded their vision, my friend.
And because their dogmatic rigidity and unwillingness to listen to the will of the Force, their traditions became a crutch that ultimately would empower the return of the Sith and the collapse of the Republic.
Well, it's not the first time we've been wrong recently, is it?
And it can be argued that all of this started with one Jedi by the name of Sifo Dyas.
The Kaminoans recounted that it was Jedi Master Sifo Dyas who ordered the production of a clone army.
Sifo Dyas trained as a Jedi initiate alongside future Separatist leader Dooku of Sereno, and he was an incredibly gifted Jedi, although not necessarily by the standards that most masters would use to judge. Growing up alongside the young Dooku, Sifo was not nearly as strong in the Force, nor as skilled with the lightsaber as his close friend. However, Sifo Dyas had an incredibly rare gift, a proficiency with the Force power that very few Jedi had ever experienced, much less so strongly. When they were young, Dooku and Sifo Dyas were best friends. They trained in the same Jedi clan and were inseparable for most of their childhood. When the two were about 14 years old, Sifo Dyas found a journal from an old Jedi troublemaker who was, according to rumors, cast out from the Jedi Order for unknown reasons, with theories ranging from Sith revival to even an affair with the Chancellor's aide.
Do it for me, milady, please.
This journal spoke of ancient rooms locked within passages hidden in the Jedi Temple, and Sifo, being the more mischievous of the two, dragged Dooku along to help him open these hidden passages, since Dooku was more gifted in the ways of the Force. This passage led to a vault filled with dark side relics and Sith artifacts. While this was not Dooku's first exposure to the dark side, having come into contact with a Sith war beast at the age of 10, this was the first time that Sifo Dyas had been in direct contact with the power of the dark side, and this little misadventure would come to shape the lives of both students and change the course of galactic history forever.
No, that's not possible.
In the aftermath of this event, a Jedi Master by the name of Leen Kastana would become a prominent player in the lives of both initiates. Kastana had a fascination with darkside relics, believing that the Sith threat was not over, and she focused much of her time and energy urging the Council to allocate more resources into purging the remnants of the dark side from the galaxy. However, the Jedi Council largely ignored Kastana's pleas, insisting that the Sith threat was over.
Impossible. The Sith have been extinct for a millennium.
And that the dark side would never take hold again in the galaxy. But Dooku had already come into contact with the power of the dark side, and he saw Kastana as one of the only Jedi Masters who had properly recognized what actions needed to be taken to prevent the Sith from taking hold of the galaxy once again. When the time came for Dooku and Sifo Dyas to be selected as Padawans, Dooku hoped to gain the attention of Kastana and be taken as her Padawan, convinced that she would empower him to be the first line of defense against the Sith. However, when their tournament had concluded, Kastana had instead chosen Dooku's best friend, Sifo Dyas, as her Padawan. During their Padawan years, Dooku and Sifo Dyas spent much less time together than they had as initiates, with Yoda's position on the Jedi Council keeping him tied down to the Jedi Temple, while Kastana embarked on great adventures to secretly hunt down Sith artifacts. And it was also during this time that Sifo Dyas' most unique Force power began to manifest, an incredibly valuable but also dangerous ability known as Foresight, an ability that pressed upon him vivid and terrible visions of the future. While it was not incredibly uncommon for Jedi to be able to sense the future, it was rare for a single Jedi to have such a deep connection to it, and it was especially rare in the decades leading up to the formation of the Empire, as the dark side of the Force had been used to cloud the Jedi's vision and hide the truth from them.
Blind we are, with creation of this clone army we could not see.
It was even suggested in the book that it was in fact Sifo Dyas' exposure to the room filled with Sith artifacts that had first unlocked this ability within him, since he now knew the presence of the dark side and was able to see through its cloud.
You must break through the fog of lies the Jedi have created around you.
These events are all described in the audio production Dooku Jedi Lost, where it is made clear repeatedly that Yoda believes that a Jedi's mind should always be on the present and that it is foolish to look into the future.
I should be mindful of the future,
but not at the expense of the moment.
This was also expressed to Dooku several times when Dooku expressed that he believed that the Jedi should be preparing for the return of the Sith, and to Kastana as well whenever she voiced that she also shared Dooku's concerns. Now, the first time Yoda mentions this in the book, Sifo Dyas and Dooku are both only 10 years old, and the quote seems to be a fairly standard Jedi proverb. However, as the story continues, it becomes clear that this mentality is not nearly so harmless as a simple mantra, but has become a dogma that will eventually lead to the very downfall of the Jedi Order itself. The conflict between focusing on the present and the future is a major theme throughout the entire book, with Yoda and the Jedi leadership regularly chastising Dooku when he would look to the future to influence his actions. In the first act of the audiobook, this internal conflict seems to simply represent the points of view that separated Dooku, the idealist, from the Jedi leadership. This conflict comes to a head, however, in the second act of the story, where it is revealed that this is not a simple difference in opinion, but it has evolved into something far more sinister. When Dooku joins Kastana and Sifo Dyas on an expedition away from Coruscant, Master Kastana reveals to Dooku that Sifo Dyas' visions of the future threaten his standing in the Jedi Order, telling Dooku that she has learned of an entire wing of the Citadel prison dedicated to silencing those who see the future. Now, for those who don't know, the Citadel was a correctional facility built by the Jedi designed specifically to imprison Jedi. The Citadel first appeared in Star Wars The Clone Wars, having been claimed by the Separatists and used to imprison Jedi Master Even Piell and a young officer Wilhuff Tarkin. The Citadel returned in Star Wars Rebels, refitted to maintain the facade of a prison, but instead was used as a trap to lure in and destroy the Jedi Remnant. Now, in the years leading up to the Clone Wars, the Citadel was supposed to be a prison used for rogue Jedi who posed a threat to the galaxy. However, as the Jedi's arrogance began to grow, the Jedi slowly began to use the prison to house any Jedi who even threatened to undermine the Council's line of thinking. Emblematic of this was the wing devoted to those with foresight. Now, this does bring up the question of why. Why would the Jedi want to silence those that the Force had chosen to reveal the future? While at face value, this may simply be an attempt to encourage Jedi to focus on the present, as is said by Master Yoda, this seems like an incredibly extreme measure, far too extreme to be justified logically. Another possibility, and one that I find more likely, is that the Jedi were trying to preserve their reputation.
I think it is time we inform the Senate that our ability to use the Force is diminished.
We see in the prequels and in the Clone Wars that the Council's connection with the Force has been diminished, and this would threaten to cause the galaxy to lose faith in them as protectors.
If informed the Senate is, multiply, our adversaries will.
This is a major undertone throughout the entire Clone Wars animated series as the Jedi try to preserve a positive public image and hide the fact that the dark side has clouded their vision.
The dark side clouds everything.
The final missing piece in figuring out why is the specific type of visions that the Force began granting in these decades. The same visions were given to Pong Krell, Eno Cordova, and yes, Sifo Dyas. These were but a few Jedi shown the impending doom of the Republic and the annihilation of the Jedi Order. As the Sith began to prepare for their revival, the culmination of 1,000 years of Sith planning, the Force began to push back, sending warnings to the Jedi in hopes that they would wake up and pay attention. But the Jedi Council saw another possible outcome. that the people of the Republic would see these visions as proof that the Jedi were doomed and unable to protect them. Instead of listening to these warnings, the Council instead decided to persecute those who bore the messages, and imprison and silence the prophets who brought the warnings of destruction to come and the action required to change it. In these days, there were many who came with words of the Force, but the Jedi refused to pay attention, and their failure to listen would be their great sin and the catalyst for their own annihilation. Because of this, Sifo Dyas kept his gifts hidden from the Jedi Council for most of his life, terrified that the Jedi would lock him away in the Citadel and keep him from speaking out. Instead, he only shared his visions with his master, Leen Kastana, and his best friend, Dooku. The three of them worked together, using his gifts to find and root out the suffering in the galaxy that the Jedi didn't deem important enough to take action on, all the while paying attention to his visions and preparing for the return of the Sith. Eventually, the complacency of the Jedi was too much for Dooku to bear, and he renounced the Jedi Order and left to rebuild his homeworld on his own, without the help of the Council or the Republic. And it was after that Sifo Dyas was motivated to take the greatest risk of his life. Now consumed by his visions detailing the fall of the Republic and the Jedi, Sifo knew that he needed to speak out. He began urging the Jedi Council to begin preparing for war, advocating for the commissioning of a grand army for the Republic.
He said he foresaw great conflict, and that the Republic would need to raise an army.
However, the fear of persecution still kept him from revealing where this urgency came from, not sharing his visions with the rest of the Council, and as such, the Council deemed his views too extreme and revoked his seat on the Jedi Council.
Sifo Dyas sat on this council until we judged his ideas to be too extreme.
Realizing that the Jedi were unwilling to take action, Sifo Dyas took matters into his own hands, traveling to Kamino and commissioning an army for the Republic in secret, knowing that this army would be ready at the exact moment that they were needed.
Please tell your master, Sifo Dyas, that his order will be met on time.
Sifo Dyas revealed these plans to his old friend Dooku, who offered to pay for the army himself on the wealth of his family. Of course, this would end up being the very catalyst for the Jedi's own extinction, as Dooku would eventually come under the sway of the resurfaced Sith and use his influence with the Kaminoans to set the stage for Order 66. But do you think the course of galactic history would have been changed if the Council had in fact listened to Sifo Dyas? Would the Jedi have still fallen if they hadn't imprisoned all the Jedi gifted with foresight, capable of foreseeing their destruction? Was it really their own willful blindness that brought about their own destruction? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, because I want to know what you, my friends, have to say about our favorite galaxy far, far away. Don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date with everything Star Wars related, and thank you all again so much for watching. And as always, may the lore be with you, now and forever.